So, what would have happened if the Pascal Crisis Stabilization Center had actually went before the Board of Appeals on May 22nd? The Commissioner's Public Forum on Tuesday, May 6th was standing room only as residents across the county showed up to talk about the proposed Pascal Crisis Service Center in Charlotte Hall. Many who spoke were in favor of the Crisis Center, including local mental health professionals. Most of those speaking out with concerns about the proposed location did recognize that there is a need for mental health services. But just 2 days later, on Thursday, May 8th, St. Mary's County government issued a press release announcing that the application for the Crisis Center in Charlotte Hall had been withdrawn. The Crisis Center was scheduled to go before the Board of Appeals on May 22nd for conditional use approval, which would then allow them to take their concept site plan to be heard at the Planning Commission. Over the last couple of weeks, as I followed this story, there seems to be two main elements at play here. The first is a lack of community engagement by our local government, particularly the county commissioners. The second was a general lack of understanding or awareness of the local zoning ordinance and how it impacts what is developed and where it is developed in this county. To help explain the zoning issue, let's take a look at where this is located. So right above me here, you see Mount Wolf Road. Here is where the Crisis Center would be, surrounded by a few residential streets and some homes. Okay, so there's several different zoning types here. So on this map, the Crisis Center would be on this skinny parcel right here and the one right next to it, which is zoned residential low density. So how do I find out what is allowed to be built there? Well, I need to go online onto the county's website, and to get here, go on a browser, type in stmaryscountymd.gov, and when you get to the homepage, go to Public Agencies in the toolbar and then select Land Use and Growth Management. Scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page and you will see a section labeled Ordinances, and then right here is what you want, the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance with Amendments. When I opened that up, I searched for residential low density, which says that residential low density is intended to provide for low to medium density residential development. Compatible institutional uses are allowed subject to appropriate standards. Okay, so I'm going to assume that this would be defined as a residential service, which we see here has general, limited, and conditional standards. The conditional standards, the one that stands out is that the applicant must provide evidence to demonstrate that the use will not cause negative impacts to adjacent neighborhood because of traffic, noise, or the number of patients or people being cared for. So when I look for residential services as a use, it does require a conditional use approval for residential low densities. A conditional use is defined as a specific use that would not be appropriate generally or without restriction. And in a March 2025 letter provided to Land Use and Growth Management, the Crisis Center's engineer attempted to answer some of the questions surrounding whether this conditional use would be appropriate. The bullet points shown are the requirements from the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, while the numbered paragraphs are the engineer's response. The engineer also points out that the proposed use will not create any adverse effects that are not otherwise associated with this zoning type, and that under the current zoning, the owners may subdivide this and build multiple residential homes, which would generate more traffic, more exterior lighting. So, what would have happened if the Pascal Crisis Stabilization Center had actually went before the Board of Appeals on May 22nd? So we've already talked about how under the conditional standards requirements is that the applicant must provide evidence to demonstrate that they will not have any negative impacts to the adjacent neighborhood. But in the administration section of the comprehensive ordinance, it does lay out some standards that the Board of Appeals must follow. Pay attention to the one right above my head, number 2. That standard says the establishment, maintenance, and operation of the conditional use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, convenience, morals, order, or general welfare. Now, I don't have a planning background and I'm not a lawyer, but I would say that if the residents showed up like they did at this past public forum with their concerns and voiced them, that the Board of Appeals would probably have a hard time finding that the second standard there had been met. It's hard to say whether or not the Board of Appeals would have granted conditional use approval and allowed this project to move forward. But clearly, when people get involved and participate in local government, their voices can be heard. That's also why it's important to stay involved and hold your elected officials accountable. Now we should be moving forward and focusing on how can the county commissioners and our state representatives help Pascal find an appropriate location. My hope is that all of the residents who got involved and went to the public forum last Tuesday will continue to stay involved. And here's something else you can do. Go back to the county's website, click on Department of Land Use and Growth Management, and when you get there, click on Comprehensive Plan Update. Once you do that, click on the middle one right here, Get Involved. That'll bring you to this page where you can click Participate Now, and it will take you to a series of surveys to offer your feedback about the comprehensive plan and how it should be revised. Once the comprehensive plan is revised and updated, it will then be used to update the zoning maps and the comprehensive zoning ordinance. So make sure you stay involved. Follow me at Informed St. Mary's and go to informedstmarys.com to keep up to date.